Good afternoon. On behalf of Infotech, the City of Meriden, Connecticut, and VHB, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on eConstruction 101, Mitigating Risk and Maximizing Value for Owners. A couple of things before we start out here, a little housekeeping. Throughout today's webinar, you will be muted. Don't worry, we can't hear you, but we would like your participation. There is a Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen that we will be monitoring. Please use this to ask questions, ask any questions you have throughout the webinar. We will address as many questions as we can. Any questions we are not able to answer will be compiled, and all registered participants will receive an email in about a week. Finally, we understand that we are all using Zoom with varying internet connections, which may bring challenges. You may experience connection issues, but know that a recording of this webinar will be available next week. Well, to start off here, we're going to do a little introduction. Howard, why don't you start?
Hi, I'm Howard Weissberg. I am the Director of Public Works in the City of Meriden. I've been the Director of Public Works for the past 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was the Associate City Engineer for Meriden. Before that, I had worked as a Deputy Director of Public Works in the City of New Haven, and also involved in public works in Maryland.
Josh?
Thanks, Dave. Tough to follow up Howard's resume, but I'm Josh Iannotti with VHB. I've been with VHB for 5 or 6 years now, and working on roadway design projects, but also I've been involved in construction inspection projects here for the last handful of years, 2 or 3 years.
Okay, and I'm Dave Caro. I'm now an independent consultant, and I'm a graduate of New York State Department of Transportation. This is my 51st year doing construction and e-construction, etc. I do want to mention one thing about Infotech. Infotech is also the contractor for AASHTO software. It's AASHTO project, and it includes a construction and materials portion to that, a module. And they also are the contractor for, many of you know of, Site Manager out there. Connecticut is using Site Manager currently, and they are migrating to the new AASHTO project construction and materials. Okay, I think we can move on for now. Okay, the agenda. Well, we're going to give you a brief introduction to eConstruction, and then we're going to look at some case studies, and then we're going to do the Q&A. Now, let's take a look at a few terms here, some terminology in eConstruction for those that aren't familiar. Federal Highway came out with their everyday counts many years ago, and everyday counts 3, which was in 2005, that's where you can find through their resources addressing challenges and return on investment for paperless project delivery, eConstruction. That's the part of eConstruction that we're going to be discussing today. Now, just like with DOTs, national interest in eConstruction is at the local level continues to increase. And we have Meriden, Connecticut with VHB to help share their lessons learned and best practices. eConstruction can be a broader term to include those topics on the blue side of the slide, excuse me, of the scale, but the session that would focus is electronic construction management, specifically the construction, inspection, and administration phase. With the orange side, FHWA recognizes some DOTs and many locals may be holding off due to lack of clarity or just the discussion around cost and feasibility analysis. And we've asked Howard and Josh to join to speak to how they overcame those initial hurdles and their involvement using STIC funding, which is the State Transportation Innovation Council incentive program for their eConstruction software. Now, STIC funding is available to not just DOTs, but also to the locals. Well, excuse me. In the city of Howard, why don't you discuss in the city of Meriden and give us give us an idea of how you got this started, and talk about your engineering group.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. City of Meriden's a town of about 60,000 in central Connecticut, not far from New Haven. My division's responsible for infrastructure management and capital projects like paving, culvert installation, signal replacements. Many of our projects are funded by the state DOT. And the state DOT has significant requirements in terms of paperwork and administration of their projects. So that's where we came up with the idea of trying to figure out a way to streamline these operations. We don't do enough of these to become experts at them, but we have a significant amount of projects where we really wanted to make sure that we're following the rules without taking up a tremendous amount of our resources.
Another thing, Howard, is for your DOT funded projects, I understand that there are specific methods for record keeping. Could you describe the 4-volume method requirements for those attending not from Connecticut, and what the record keeping looked like before eConstruction entered into the picture?
Sure, Dave. For DOT funded projects, on municipally administered projects where the city is administering the project and DOT is providing the reimbursement and oversight, we're required to maintain the 4-volume method. Volume 1 is daily work reports. Volume 2 are contract items, materials testing. Volume 3 is comps and quantities. Volume 4 is all sorts of miscellaneous project information, inspections of field records, prime and subprime information, change orders, labor wage checks. There's a lot of back and forth between the volumes to make sure that everything matches. So you do have to enter information in a lot of different places and make sure that all of that information is correct. It does create a lot of paperwork and a lot of knowledge about the process and how the process not just is handled day to day, but at the end, at the auditing procedure, because at some point DOT will go into the audit, and if things aren't correlating there, then you have to review all of your records, sometimes multiple years after the project has been completed in construction.
Why did the topic of eConstruction come to the forefront for you? Were there difficulties when it came to record keeping on paper and spreadsheets, etc.?
Everybody's always looking to simplify. I know a lot of people create their own spreadsheets for managing the DOT projects. We were working with DOT on a DOT project where they had access to Site Manager, and it seemed like their record management and record keeping was significantly less cumbersome than ours trying to maintain the paper-based system. So what we were searching for is a compatible, similar system to what the DOT had that could be used at the municipal level, especially since we don't have, we don't undertake as many projects as DOT does, to the point that we are completely proficient in maintaining the four value method.
Oh, thanks for that. How about well, let's go to your Pratt Street pilot project, Howard. Can you talk about the project that's, that paved the way for utilizing eConstruction tools?
Sure. We received a grant through the state's LOTSIP program, Local Transportation Capital Improvement Program, where the state does not require the four value method, but it does require auditing of the project. It was a $3 million project in downtown Meriden. It was a road diet. It involved the landscape median. It involved it involved intersection realignments. It was an opportune project for us to try to employ some eConstruction as a pilot. We worked with DOT. We got some grant funding to purchase a couple of licenses and a tablet. And we were able to, concurrently with other record keeping, manage the project using Appiah.
Okay. So with the Pratt Street project being a pilot project for a cloud-based record keeping process, what test criteria was used to evaluate whether it was a success?
From our perspective, it was really making sure that DOT had no concerns with the audit, that we were able to research and review documents very quickly, that we were kept apprised of the project status at all times, and it, if there were any issues, how quickly were they resolved?
Well, that's good. That's good. So, they're very nice. Really came out, according to this picture, it looked very nice, Howard. Came out well. Let's, how did you go about the funding for the use of your eConstruction tool? Was it stick funds? What did you do?
We used stick funding for a couple of licenses. Beyond that, we just included the licenses. We supplied them to our CEI firm with the project. And that's how we currently incorporate Appiah into our projects. We purchase the licenses and we add the consultants to the as users.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, let's move on here now, and we're going to talk now with Josh. He's with VHB, which was Meriden's Meriden's consultant on their construction projects. So, Josh, being with the CICA firm on the project piloting eConstruction, what had you been using for record keeping prior to this?
Yeah, good question, Dave. So before we started using Appiah or eConstruction in general, we were using the four volume method where it's required, and where it wasn't required for municipally managed projects, we call it a four volume light method, which still has, I believe we use 3 of the volumes for the most part. And it's the figure at the bottom of the slide here really does a good job of outlining our process. So we would be in the field, our inspectors would be in the field with sometimes a clipboard with a sheet of paper, other times a tablet or a laptop, and they'd fill out the information based on the work that was done in a specific day, travel back to the office or back to their home, scan all the information in, manually enter, take the information from the document that or the spreadsheet that they entered and enter it into another document. A lot of cross-checking involved, kind of as Howard alluded to, and then determine the costs for the items, tally up those costs, transfer them to another spreadsheet, and calculate the payment to the contractor. So really a cumbersome process, but that's what we've been used to.
Wow. I'm glad I didn't have to do that anymore. Let's see. I understand that you did give mobile inspection a try. How did that impact your team's process?
Yeah, so it's really made a huge difference in the way of efficiency for us. And we've really enjoyed using it on the few projects that we've used it on so far in Meriden. And we've got some construction projects slated for this year where we intend to use it some more. And yeah, it has really made a huge difference in the way of efficiency when we're in the field, as well as the work that's done at the end of each workday. So we have the mobile inspector app on our tablets. We're able to enter the information right into the online database from the field. And I'll go into a bit more detail in the ensuing slides about what the app actually looked like and the details there. But in the way of efficiency, it's for the inspector, it's much more efficient. We don't need to transfer the information from the clipboard to a spreadsheet at the end of the day. Upload photos, from a phone into the cloud or into our servers. The photos can be attached right to the reports in the field. Other paperwork that we receive from the contractor can be attached right to the reports in the field. I'll show you all what that looks like. But also for the project managers, it's been more efficient. For the owners, it's been more efficient. Project managers can review and approve reports as soon as they're submitted, which oftentimes, again, is from the field. It's very easy for owners to look at the website and see the work that has been done up to a specific day. And so it's really improved efficiency quite a bit. One thing that I did want to mention is we've also used other technologies to kind of supplement Appiah here over the last year or so. We've used OneNote and Microsoft Word, just because we're all used to the old method, right? So it takes a little bit to get more comfortable with the new method. So we use OneNote for things like a punch list, an ongoing punch list, the work that needs to be done, that sort of thing. But we certainly look forward to using Appiah more and other technologies to really get the most out of the tools that are available.
Good. Any other takeaways related to the use of technology that are notable, positive impacted the project?
Well, so one that we've talked about here over the last couple of months, and fortunately we haven't had this experience, but in terms of claims or litigation, if we ever get there, using Mobile Inspector or Appiah in the field is a form of true source data entry. So, if at some point a claim goes to court, you can look back at the data that was punched into the app while we were in the field, and that was done on site. There's no more I say this kind of cheeky, but you're not looking at the back of a napkin to see the notes that were jotted down and then transferred through 3 different steps. So that's certainly a benefit that we've been discussing.
That certainly is. All right, I guess, we're going to look at some screenshots here. Josh, I think everybody would like to see, something about the system and, work to give, some of these agencies and consultants and attendants the idea what they can expect.
Sure. Yeah, happy to talk through it. So this is what Appiah looks like, and this is the system that we used for Pratt Street, and we've used on other projects in Meriden. And this is kind of the main dashboard. So you'll see on the left-hand side those different options. Those will stay consistent throughout the slides that I'm about to go through, and it's really user-friendly, which we found to be really helpful. As I mentioned, it's a transition for the folks that have been used to a record-keeping method up until this point. So the interface has really helped us along the way. And so this is kind of the main page that you'd land on if you were about to punch in your daily activities, and not really a whole lot to look at here other than the project information and the big calendar that shows the different daily reports. And those would show up as drafts if they weren't submitted or approved, but once they're approved, they're labeled as final. So as we scroll through, we'll move on. And this, as I click through the slides, I think I scrolled too far. Let me back up one here. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to try to jump back to the daily activities. I believe it was the slide before this. I jumped over one. Okay, here we go. So, so as you click into one of those daily reports, this is where you land. And one thing that I'd mention is the mobile inspector app. I'll talk about that in a few slides, but the data is actually punched into the mobile inspector app, and then when you submit your report, it falls into the Appiah database, and this is what you'll see. So in general, one of the ongoing themes is that Appiah is great for it gives you back what you put into it, right? So if you're really detailed about the information that you put in there, and you kind of keep your note taking consistent between inspectors, between days, it really goes a long way in the way of searching back to see when work was done. You know, with the 4-volume method, oftentimes when we need to see when work was done, you're flipping through reports or clicking through a big folder of photos to see when particular work was done. With Appiah, you can just search by a keyword. So the more detailed you are with the information that you put in here, the more it really helps you out. So this is what a daily report looks like. You've got, this is all customizable, but you've got the different fields at the top that you typically include in your report, such as the weather, temperature, who the contractor is, and yeah, I'll continue to scroll here. One of the other great benefits is that you can include personnel teams or crews, I think they call it, as well as equipment. So you can copy your reports from day to day. And if you have an excavation crew that's typically the same, the equipment and the members of the crew get copied over from day to day. But then when they're off site and the milling crew comes in or the paving crew comes in, you can have them preloaded as well, and just saves you a lot of time rather than, again, just doing all that copy and pasting behind the scenes. So really, really helps with efficiency. So I'll continue to scroll here. And so this is what it looks like when you start entering items in. So, and this is where it really starts to save some time on the back end. So here we have class 1 asphalt, just an example of an item. You can enter remarks or a location, and it'll show, oftentimes we put the exact station where a certain item was placed or where specific work was done. And it's really great because you can click into the specific items, similar to what volume 2 looks like in the 4-volume method. You can look at a page for a specific item and see all of the days when that work was done, where it was done, the station is shown, the quantity. So really, again, helpful for looking back at specific work that had been done on specific days. So this is what the items look like. And then I mentioned attachments earlier. So I can take, when I'm in the field and I use an iPad, I can take photos with my iPad and attach them directly to my reports in the field and include a description there of the work that's done. So, and we do the same thing for PC1s or material certifications. When we're handed them in the field, we can take pictures of them and upload them to the report so that we can look back on them. So I'll continue on to the, so this is Mobile Inspector, and this is, again, the app that's actually used on our tablets. Very user-friendly, a lot less going on than the dashboard that we were just looking at. And so this is the tool that allows us to add those items, the location you could see on the right-hand side. When you select an item, the values at the top of the page are just, they're brought in automatically, and then you can add the quantity, the location, station from and to, and any remarks there as well. And again, at the end of the day, when you submit this report or this diary, it uploads directly to the Appiah database, and folks that are the owners or folks back in the office can see what's been done that day, which is really kind of handy. All right, and so this is we're back to Appiah now, the online dashboard, the desktop dashboard, I guess I should call it. And so this is the payments page. And so I should mention that on many of our projects up until this point, the contractor has developed the pay applications, and we review them as the inspectors, provide any comments, and frankly, sometimes we end up just getting a hold of their spreadsheet and we go through it line by line and edit it as we see fit. And it's really inefficient. I can think of examples where, we've had $1 missing on a project, and we've spent, 20 hours just with office staff trying to track down $1 on a project. And so by having a software that can do all of the accounting behind the scenes and the cross-checking behind the scenes, it really improves that efficiency. I feel like that efficiency word is one that I'm using on every slide here, but so you can see this is what the dashboard looks like for the applications. When you enter them in, you have fields for retainage. Of course, it'll automatically bring in the items that were placed or the items that were used over the reporting period. And it does all of the addition, all the math for you, and it'll show you, the work that had been done over the period, the work that's been done to date, and the percent complete. And this view just is a nice graphic of the work that's been done over the course of a project. With that, I believe the final page here is change orders. I'm going to let Howard talk a little bit about change orders because he's got a little bit more experience with working with change orders specifically in Appiah.
Great, thank you, Josh. For the change orders on the Pratt Street project, we did have a number. We changed the project an awful lot, as you do on road diet projects. Things come out of the woodwork and you have to make adjustments on the fly. The change order process for the traditional 4-value method is significant. The change order process in Appiah is less substantial, but there is still a fair amount of work in there. The nice thing is it does allow you to store all of your information related to the change order in one location. We found that managing the change orders in Appiah was significantly easier on the Pratt Street project. We were able to fairly easily indicate and find out how much we've spent on change orders, the status of the change orders, the reason for the change orders. You can also set parameters in the system as to when change orders need to be initiated, whether or not it's exceeding an item quantity or if it's a change condition. So there's a number of different parameters in there. It does follow it follows a fairly standardized process for change orders, but it does still require that fair attention be paid to it.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. I think everyone found that very informative. Howard, for those agencies exploring, what lessons learned and best practices do you have to share with them on this topic?
I think one of the important things is when you're implementing it into a project, it is a change. Anytime you do software implementations, you have to go in with a base level of expectation as to what you hope to get. Don't expect your first effort to change the way you're doing business right away. You want to establish some basic objectives with each project, and then as you get comfortable with it, move up. We use Appiah for a number of different projects, paving, sidewalks. The smaller projects help our guys get comfortable with it. It helps with communication, it helps resolve field issues. And then when you bring it into a much larger project where you have change orders and you have multiple sections and multiple contractors between prime and subs, that's when you can really start to put all the pieces together. So, keep your expectations low while you build up the knowledge base, because there is an awful lot of information out there.
Oh, thank you, Howard. How about you, Josh? Anything from your side of the fence? You're the ones that are in the field. Any recommendations from you?
Yeah, Dave, I would echo almost exactly what Howard said. It's a transition and it takes some time, specifically when you've got some inspectors that as I mentioned, that have been used to a specific type of record keeping for so long. And technology, we know that technology moves pretty fast, so it can be overwhelming, particularly when you're tracking, a couple $1 million construction project, right? There's quite a bit of pressure there, and you want to make sure that your bases are covered and you're doing it the right way. So I would say we're going through that process right now. I mentioned that we still use OneNote quite a bit, and so when we started using Appiah, and Howard motivated us to use Appiah and eConstruction and Meriden on our projects in Meriden. We looked at it as an opportunity to make our daily reporting a little bit more efficient, and help ourselves on the back end with some of the accounting. And now we're excited about the next step to really look forward at developing payment applications for the contractors, and using the tools that are available for change orders and so forth. So I would agree, just a transition process. Take your time, and really don't be afraid to reach out to the folks at Infotech, because they've been helpful along the way with identifying the tools that are available, and explaining how to use them.
Oh, thank you. Well, I guess it's now question time, and so we'll go ahead and we'll address some of your questions that they've been coming in. As a reminder, you can ask questions at the bottom of your screen using the QA feature. So let's see what we got up here. Okay, question for Josh. How has COVID-19 affected the documentation process for your projects? What benefits or issues do you see, particularly with eConstruction?
So, Dave, I would say, about a year ago, maybe a little bit over a year ago, our company was forced into a full-time work from home model. And when we talk about the 4-volume method, little side story, a couple of us were in the office last week closing out books on another project where we didn't use eConstruction. And it's not something that you could do real easily remotely with a team that's, everybody's at their house in different locations. You're forced to sit around a conference table and go and spread out the books and get your computers up and review all the information, cross-check everything and crunch the numbers. And so it's really helped a lot, specifically now where we have our team kind of spread out all over the state. And we're able to, as I mentioned, just look at all the information that's right there in the cloud. Particularly over the course of the past year, working through the pandemic, it's really made a positive impact. And now we're getting to the point where we're still closing out some of the books on projects. Howard mentioned that, oftentimes it's years later, and that's the case. We have projects where the folks that were working on it in the field are no longer with us, and we're still working to close out the books because that's, it's part of the process. And so having the efficiency to be able to close out a project, have all the information there, and do it, in a remote work environment has really had a positive impact for sure.
That's great. Okay, I got one here for Howard. It says, what types of projects are you planning on using this for this year?
So the projects that we're using it for this year, it's going to be supplemental because we have a number of DOT projects, and DOT still requires the paper-based 4-volume book, but it's essentially going to be our backup record keeping and our photo documentation on a CMAC traffic signal project. We're replacing 12 signals in downtown Meriden. We're going to be using for a lot zip project that is not a 4-volume project. It's going to be our primary record keeping for a $2.5 million road paving project, and it's being used for a local bridge program bridge replacement project. Those are all this year. And we're going to have our in-house inspection team utilize it for our normal sidewalk and road construction activities this year.
That's good. That's good. Here's a question. I'll let you do this one, Howard. Is it stick funding? How can we apply?
So yeah,
There you go. You got that one, buddy.
there's actually FHWA has a Center for Accelerating Innovation. And if you Google them, should have the stick incentive program guidance on it. It's a small pool of money that's given to DOTs every year, and I believe they have the eligibility and application requirements on there. Something that advances one of FHWA's initiatives is typically more favorable, and we tied this into the Everyday Counts initiative and the eConstruction, and that's how we were able to get the grant. And it was a fairly small grant. I think it was in the neighborhood of like $9,000 or $10,000.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is for Josh. How do you transition the more experienced members of your team to a new process, especially when they've been documenting projects the same way for so long?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I think we touched on that a little bit at the end there, just how we've done it. And that's just transition it, transition the folks over in a step-by-step process. And it'll help quite a bit now that we've got a team that has used Appiah and is more comfortable with it. And, having them to guide the folks that haven't along the way. But that's the process that we've been going through here over the last couple of years. And as I mentioned, we've got some projects coming down the line this year we've got construction that'll be starting here in the next couple of months. And we plan to use Appiah and eConstruction for all of those projects where we're allowed to, where we're not required to do to use the 4-volume method for record keeping. So I would say just, proceed, with what you're comfortable with, and using the technology for daily reporting is extremely straightforward. And with a few tutorials from the staff at Infotech, we were able to jump right in and use it for our reporting. And after a day or so, we were very comfortable.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, Howard, let's see. How are you looking to expand use in the future?
From an engineering standpoint, we're constantly trying to push this closer and closer to design. The transition between final design and construction's still a little bit uneasy. So I think the next step is utilizing existing Appiah, existing Infotech software for the bidding purposes, but also figuring out if there's a way to incorporate, the final design, the plan specs and estimates into Appiah prior to going out to bid, so we can look at everything in a electronic perspective before we actually go out to bid, and see if we can, fine tune and finalize anything. So we're constantly trying to push things into design and figure out what we can use as a good design tool as well. So the goal is really to capture as much project information as we can from project initiation to project completion electronically, because we're still we're on paper, we're in Excel spreadsheets. We'd love to be able to have everything in one site.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's see. Here's a good one. Can you electronically sign the reports? How do you look at that, Howard? How do you look at that one?
Well, we rely on our consultants for that, but I believe that when they're signed off electronically by the project administrator. There's the project manager. There's typically we've required 2 licenses per project. So you have the chief inspector or the inspector putting everything in draft form, and then it gets approved by the project manager on the project. So once that's done, it's considered electronically signed.
if I might add to that, with the systems today, it doesn't matter which system you're using anymore. It's the date and the person, whether it's the inspector or the project engineer or whoever it is, that is what they look at now. There, I know the tradition has always been to sign, to sign everything. And I will tell you, I'm not gonna, kid you, because you can, there are those that will print everything out and make everybody sign it. And I mean, that's their prerogative. So, but as far as from the audit perspective, and that's what, what most people are looking at now, from the audit perspective, it's just exactly how Howard described it. It's the date and the person.
Hey, Dave, if I can just add to that too, one thing that I didn't mention at the bottom of each report page, there's an audit log. And so if you have different users, like Howard mentioned, if you have a project manager and a chief inspector or an inspector, when the diary or the daily report is created, there's a row that says, for our example, Josh Iannotti created the report. And then when I submit it for approval, there's a new line that says it's been submitted for approval, and each row has a date and a timestamp on it. You can see when it's approved. If something needs to be revised, you can see who revised it and when the approval was undone, and then when it was resubmitted and ultimately approved. So it's the software does a great job of really keeping track of a log, which is helpful.
Josh, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, let's see. We have time here. We got time for, one more question. So let's see. How many licenses would be required for a single inspector project, assuming oversight of that inspector is required? And is the municipality or agency required to purchase a license also for the oversight? Is that me, Howard, or you?
Well, I'll talk to my experience and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you weren't wrong.
But what, I mean, read access is available for anybody. So anybody that is granted permission can read it. To write, you need a license based on our experience. Am I accurate on that, Dave?
Yep, that's correct.
So if the municipality does not need to enter anything or approve anything, and it's solely the CEI firm, then you could get away with essentially as few as 2 licenses if you want to have an inspector and project manager.
Well, I have to agree with that, because according to this question, it says, is oversight of the inspector is required. So the answer is yes, you would need to, would need 2 licenses. Yes.
But from a municipal perspective, it's great because we don't, we can check in on the status of all of our projects and we don't need a special license for it.
That's true. That's true. The owner does not.
We maintain one anyway for our projects, so we have one, but it's not required.
Well, I guess that brings us to the next slide here. And what I would like to do is remind everybody that we're going to have another one of these in our series of webinars, and that's going to be on Tuesday, April 27th at 1 Eastern Time. And it's going to be about digital project delivery and e-ticketing. Anyone that's out there that's ever stood beside a paver and collecting tickets will be very interested in this, because this will make life much easier for everybody and much safer for everybody. Okay, thank you. We appreciate everybody listening in, and we want to please ask you to be on the lookout for an email with a survey that will help us improve future webinars. We really do rely on this information. We have our contact information, so please feel free to reach out to us. And again, thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Dave. Be well.